Earlier today, I sat down with the Brown family attorneys and Michael Brown's father, Michael Brown Sr. I started by asking him how he felt last night when he heard the decision. When you heard it, how did you feel? I know we expected it, but what was your reaction when you heard the decision?
I was upset. I didn't understand. It just let me know that where we live is not what we thought or what I thought. It's what people have been saying all the time, for a nice little minute, that this was a racist state.
As you listen to the prosecutor, in many ways tried to disparage and put in a negative light your son, what were you thinking then? I mean, as I said to press conference, I've been around a long time. I've never heard a prosecutor attack the character of the victim. As a father, this is your blood. All of us just want to see a trial. This is your blood. How did you feel while you sitting there watching this man do this to your son who can't defend himself?
That's where I was at. I was just going to say that the only person that can really talk for him is me and his mom. And at this point, you're right, he can't defend himself. He's buried. They crucified his character. For people that don't even know my son, they probably wish they did, because the things that they're saying is just, it's terrible. It's terrible.
Well, how are you feeling now? Everyone wants to know how you feel.
Well, like I said, my emotions is all over the place. I don't know what to feel. I'm just, here. I'm empty off what happened with the whole thing. With the death of my son and the verdict. So I'm just crushed.
Attorney Crump, the process of a grand jury seems to have been totally amiss in this situation. You were explaining that earlier. Would you recount that?
From dealing with many situations, the grand jury is supposed to be a process where the prosecutor actually recommends charges. He doesn't have a data dump of everything. He just says, these are what are the relevant facts, and this is why we're recommending these charges. Well, this prosecutor, as Attorney Gray and I have said over and over again, changed all the rules. He said, we're going to give all the information out there. We're not going to recommend any charges, and we're just going to let the jury figure it out on their own, which almost suggests if you do that to lay people and don't give them any direction, you can predict the result. They're not going to be able to agree on anything. And so he said this was fair. So is that to mean 28 years of him presenting stuff to grand juries was unfair? Which is it? But don't change the rules on Michael Brown Jr. when he's laying dead on the ground. Don't change the rules on our children. We just want equal justice, what Attorney Gray and us keep saying. We want due process for Michael Brown Jr. Whatever you would have did for the police officer, we want you to do that for Michael Brown Jr. And I just don't believe, Reverend Al, that he would have attacked the police officer if the shoe was on the other foot and Michael Brown would have been the shooter. We got to, as Americans, ask ourselves, what arguments would he have made if the facts were reversed?
Now, Attorney Gray, what was also striking is he seemed to go out of his way in his statement last night, the DA, to discredit the witnesses. Doesn't that have a bearing on the fact the federal government still has cases going that may call some of these witnesses, and if there's a civil proceeding, now they have the burden of a jury feeling that the witnesses, unnamed, have been discredited by the DA, and he wasn't even obligated to comment on the witness.
Absolutely. I think that it compromises that federal investigation to some extent. I also think it's a misnomer and a mischaracterization to call some of the individuals witnesses, when clearly through their testimony they said they didn't see anything. I question the decision to have those individuals to appear before the grand jury. I guess there was supposed to be some transfer of discredit from this person to all of the witnesses by saying this guy didn't see, or whoever the person was, didn't see anything, yet they're testifying. So does that mean all of those that came before who said they saw stuff really didn't? I mean, that's kind of the implication of it, but I do think that these his statement about these witnesses clearly can have some detrimental impact on a federal investigation.
The fact that he called witnesses in front of the grand jury that said they didn't see anything, then why would he call them? What's the logic? Is there a legal reason for that?
I can't think of any legal or logical layman reason for why you would do that. As Attorney Crump said earlier, and Pamela Means, the president of our National Bar Association, have put out there and made it very clear, you put on your best case. You put on the evidence that you would put on in a trial. I'm sure this prosecutor wasn't going to call a so-called witness who didn't witness anything had this case gone to trial. So why would you do it in a grand jury process to determine if you're going to have a trial? So no, it doesn't make good nonsense. And so I question that, and it just taints the whole situation, in my opinion.
Attorney Crump, when he said he felt like Hulk, this is Officer Darren Wilson, said he felt like Hulk against a 5-year-old boy. You addressed that.
Yeah, you know, a first-year law student, Reverend Al, would have done a better job of cross-examining the killer of an unarmed person than the prosecutor's office did. He was, the police officer, 6'4", 210 pounds, and Michael was 6'6", 292 pounds. They both were big guys, but he said he felt like a 5-year-old child having to fight Hulk Hogan, and nobody challenged him on that. And when you think about, he's saying his injuries, these terrible injuries, and you remember initially, Reverend Al, it was leaked he had a blowout orbital fracture to his eye socket. And then we see these pictures, and Attorney Gray and I and Attorney Parks, we couldn't believe the pictures because we said there's nothing wrong with them. It looks like it's just blush on them. And the prosecutor never addressed that, Reverend Al. Never said one word about this isn't consistent. The physical evidence isn't consistent with this plummeting, this beatdown that you say you got. And you have to question that. What was the prosecutor's prerogative here?
The standard in the federal courts is different than state court.
Yes, sir.
The bar that you have to reach for an indictment. So when he says that he and Attorney General Holder and the FBI were investigating together, the implications are not true because they would be looking at a different bar and would have a different grand jury. Is that right?
Absolutely. And as Attorney Gray said, you know, these witnesses now that he's attacked their credibility, they're part of an ongoing investigation. So you question, why would you do that? It just seems completely unfair to Michael Brown Jr.'s family and their due process.
Michael, there was a lot of coverage about a lot of the violence, even though for 103 days there have been peaceful protests. You've made it clear and even went cut a public service announcement calling for peace. And even when others would tape, you've always stood for peace. The President of the United States quoted you last night in his statement to the world about Michael's father. How important is it to you that your son be remembered for peace and for change?
It's very important. The things that's going on, you know, that's not my son. You know, my son was a good guy, a quiet guy. So, in his name, I want to keep it on a positive note, you know, and those are the issues that I'm just trying to keep pushed forward, so the world will know, you know, that we're going to stay positive through all of this, you know.
As you have now seen the report and going forward, you're determined you're going to follow this all the way through no matter what.
I'm not stopping, Reverend Al. Can't stop.
Can't stop. At the end of the day, this is an international issue to many of us, but it's this man's son. It's the mother's son. They were the ones that reached out. And when they reached out, they had no idea it would be an international story. They only wanted due process for their son. More from Ferguson and the issues of Ferguson when we come back.